All right, so we're going to talk about how I got one of my clients, Hayden's bench press from 110 to 120 kgs, in the space of 4 weeks. Now, first thing to know is that I've trained Hayden for a long time. Okay, first trained him probably 7 or 8 years ago. He's come back to me about a year ago. We started training together again. So why I tell you that is that he trusts the system. Okay, and he has belief in my ability as a trainer. Okay, so he knows what I get him to do is going to be beneficial for him in the long run. All right, so the most important thing you can do when you're looking to make change is that you need to trust the system that you're working in. Okay, so if you don't believe what your coach is saying, okay, or you're a bit unsure, or you've heard other contradicting information, okay, and you're not really going into the training approach full on and with complete belief, that's going to cause problems because when there's moments of doubt, you're not going to commit to something completely. Okay, something I've experienced as well, training with coaches in my sport, and you're sort of thinking, why are we doing this? What's the point of doing this? And you never apply yourself fully to it, and that means that you're not going to get good results from it. So, as I say, he trusts what I was doing, and even though it meant that his poundages on the bench dropped down for a little while, okay, the end result was obviously a 10 kg increase in his 1RM. So the first thing I did with Hayden was just identify the weaknesses. All right, and this is an approach I recommend for anyone, pretty much in any aspect or any area of life. They always talk about, you got to, improve your weaknesses, that sort of stuff. But to actually sit down and say, this one aspect is, is limiting me, and to make change on it, it can take a bit of work sometimes. One big one I see is with people in nutrition. Okay, so they say, oh yeah, I want to get down to, 10 kgs lighter, that sort of stuff. But when it comes to the hard parts and the part where they realise their weaknesses, it's hard to let go of them. All right, I've mentioned before, if the weekend comes and that's where people let their diet go out the window, and then Monday comes and it's slow start back into it, you're only really hitting 70% adherence for your nutrition. So it's important to identify your weakness early, okay, and then from that you need to spend a period of 4 to 6 weeks just grilling it out, okay. So again, with regards to weight loss, you get people that want to lose weight, tone up, they want to do this, they want to do that. It's just like, what do you really want? 4 to 6 weeks, throw everything at that, okay? Don't change it weekly, don't do it for 2 weeks and decide it's not for you. You really, really want that. 4 to 6 weeks is not a long time, okay? Especially in a period of, a whole year or 2 years, it's not long. So, with Hayden, we identify the weaknesses, okay? Overhead pressing and bench pressing, getting it off the chest. Okay, so the first thing I did was look at what's the more compounding movement, okay, and I decided it was going to be the overhead pressing stuff. So we got them on variations of dumbbell shoulder press, so doing semi-supinated shoulder press like this, okay, which loads up your anterior delt a bit more. Moved them to Arnold press, okay, and then finally we did some, regular shoulder press. And the idea behind this was, again, it wasn't fun because he wasn't getting, good numbers compared to his bench out on this. In fact, he was probably about, based on structural balance testing, is about 50 to 60% of where he should have been for overhead pressing. But we were able to bring that number up to 70 or 80%, okay, and then, comparative to his bench press. And so what that meant is that there was a lot more musculature and, the synergists of the movement weren't switching muscles off as quickly, all right, because, the body had faith within its own system. The next thing we did was, to get him stronger off the chest, okay, was got him doing post-fatigue supersets where he was benching and then doing flies afterwards. All right. Now the variation of flies he was doing was when he was coming in with thumbs in and then rotating at the top. Okay, so there was sort of internal rotation of the humerus, and that's shown to sort of get a bit more activation at the chest. All right. So by doing that, okay, again his numbers went down a bit, but the end result was that when he was fresh and fully recovered, there was more activation going on at the chest. So what we did over the 4-week cycle was week 1 he did 8 reps of bench press and then straight away followed up with 12 reps of flies. Did that for 4 sets. Okay. Week 2 it was 6 reps of bench, 12 flies, and then finally week 3 was 4 reps of bench press and then 12 flies at the end of that. Okay. And then when we went to retest the strength, as we say, we were both very pleasantly surprised at how effective this routine was for him. So in a nutshell, identify your weakness. Okay. Find out what's the best way and fastest way to bring that up to speed, okay? And lastly, make sure that you have faith within the system you're using, okay? And if you don't feel qualified to, prescribe yourself a system such as that, you need to reach out and find someone more experienced, okay? One final point to note as well, this is what got him, you know, through this part of his training. To get the next sort of 120, we're looking for 130 now. To get to that next point, we need to use different approaches again. And what might take you from a 60 kg bench to a 100 kg bench might not necessarily work to get you from 100 to 140, okay? So bear in mind that, you know, while it's good to identify these weaknesses, there's a lot of other variables in there as well. Okay, and you know, at the very, very top level, you need to make sure your technique's right, you know, that all the muscles are working together, you've got good spotters, all these things really come into play. So this is just sort of a, you know, just a sort of a snapshot of an approach that I have used, which I thought I'd share. But again, you can use the lessons from this in pretty much any aspect of, you know, training, let alone life. Cool, any questions as always, let me know. Otherwise, stay tuned for the next one. Cheers.